we are back. Cracking this bad boy open. Cracking her open, okay? And 9 packs to be opening, guys. 9 whole dang packs. We got this going on right now. The Secret Service chief, Kimberly Cheadle. No relations to the actor Don Cheadle.
Ability here in the communication process. I don't understand why people didn't perceive that as a credible threat. The video that Mr. Christian Morphy had shown there was clearly a credible threat.
And we are on YouTube.
So how is it that all of these mistakes could be made? How many explosive devices were found on or near the site?
Again, I would have to defer you to the FBI.
Madam, I believe they were in his car.
Go to Kick right now and go ahead and subscribe me on Kick. Download Kick.
Main gas line. It wasn't just the fact that he had a rifle. It was the fact that he had the ability to inflict enormous harm, enormous numbers of casualties had those devices exploded. I want to know also, when your agents conduct a site review, are they fully informed of all of the threats that are being made against the principle that they're protecting?
What I can tell you is that when our agents go out to conduct an advance, their whole goal is to ensure
I
the safety and
understand what the goal
security.
is. The failure to secure that building not only put the former president's life in danger, it put the lives of individuals in the crowd in danger as well. I mean, the Reagan shooting, there were other people shot at that time as well. And the Secret Service members' lives were in danger.
He's grilling this.
So I don't understand
Starting to believe
how you can continue to stay in the position you're in. This was a failure of historic magnitude. 43 years without anything like this happening. And you failed, in this case, in a spectacular way. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair recognizes Mr. Mfume from Maryland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to commend you and the ranking member on your joint statement and for holding this hearing that we might all at least attempt to try to get some answers. Some of us, Ms. Cheadle, grew up in an era not too unlike what we see today in terms of political.
Had to be a Japanese guy. I guess I'm wrong. It's my bad.
Of President Kennedy. Some of us, like myself, remember 2 days later when Jack Ruby on live TV shot and killed Lee Harvey Oswald. We've seen over and over and over since that time these kind of attempts, whether it was the assassination of Martin Luther King or Bobby Kennedy, or the attempted attack on George Wallace in Laurel, Maryland, the shooting in 1981.
All of these assassination attempts, for the most part, in the past 50 or 60 years, have been set up.
Now this matter regarding former President Trump. Let me try, if I might, to take another walk at this.
How's this?
People just assume that whoever is in charge takes full responsibility when there's never been, at least on this magnitude and scale, this sort of failure. So when members ask you, are you going to resign, and you say you have no intention to, they are perplexed, like many people who watch what's going on.
Mic ain't working good.
And there's some things I just don't understand. Why was the building, the ARG building, placed outside of the perimeter when clearly it was close enough for someone to launch an attack?
So again, sir, we are looking into all of the details of how the advance was comprised, but I can tell you that there was overwatch on that building provided that day.
By a drone?
I'm not going to get into the specifics of technology or assets that were
Okay,
used in
well,
the forum.
I think it's fair to say the Overwatch failed because the shooter got up on the roof and stayed there for a while and people had pointed him out. So do you think that your Overwatch was a failure in that case?
I think that we need to know the full details to understand how this occurred.
And why was the rooftop left naked to begin with? Can you tell us that, considering it was within the line of sight and so very close?
Again, I can't speak to the specifics of this particular event site, but what I can tell you is that when the Secret Service develops an advanced plan, they take into account a number of factors when they're building their advance. If there are buildings or areas of concern, and Overwatch is one of those mitigations that they want to put in place, then they will cover off areas of responsibility.
I understand that, but the shooter came to the attention of your agency 52 minutes before the former president got to the stage. Did anybody get assigned to watch or cover that individual who had already been seen with a advanced finder on him and other suspicious matters? Was anybody assigned to track him?
So what I'd like to clarify is that a suspicious individual
I got that part.
was
It's not a
brought
threat.
to the attention
I know.
of our personnel. And again, having a rangefinder at an outdoor event.
Well, let me ask you this. When the suspicious person was brought to the attention of the Secret Service, was anybody in the detail ordered to follow and stay with that suspicious person just because they might become a threat?
So we have a number of teams that are on the ground. And again, we are trying to verify the timelines of when those notifications were made to our personnel so that they could assume the responsibility of trying to track that individual.
Ms. Cheadle, there has been a lot of discussion, some of which raised itself earlier in this hearing about poor staff morale within your agency. And I have the July 17th report of Government Executive, which is a credible reporting service for the federal government, for employees. And the 2023 ranking of places to work within the federal government showed, and this is through the Office of Personnel Management, that the Secret Service came in 413th out of 459 sub-agencies and agencies. Can you explain that?
Certainly. What I can tell you is the Secret Service is a difficult job. It challenges our employees daily. It's holidays, it's weekends, it's no leave periods.
But, madam, people come to work knowing that. You do explain that when you hire somebody. They know that.
He's like, come on.
It's the same with other agencies. They miss holidays. They come to work at odd hours. But to be worked, one of the worst places to work within the federal government, 413 out of 459. I just need an explanation. What do you think as the director there?
I think that this,
And that's the last question, but please answer Mr. Mfume's question.
I think that this is a challenging job. I think that it's a challenging environment to be in law enforcement, and we do have a no-fail mission. And our folks are tasked with that every day, 365 days of the year. But I can tell you, I've also taken a number of measures since I've been the director to recruit and retain and stem the tide of attrition in our agency, which will hopefully alleviate some of that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chair now recognizes Mr. Sessions from Texas.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. I join in the calls of both all of our members to say thank you for doing this hearing on a bipartisan basis. Director, I'm not going to sit here and say you ought to resign, but I am going to say that you have not given us confidence that you have the ability to understand what happened, to take the responsibility in terms of understanding. You've spent a number of years. How many years do you say you've been with the agency?
29.
Well, I spent 16 years with AT&T, moved 7 times with them, and had a really good feel about their operations, how they worked, what was acceptable, who was responsible. And I've heard you say today numbers of times, well, you've got to wait. Well, you've got to wait. Wait for the final report. When is the final going to happen? I mean, how long do we have to wait before you can give us credible answers. You've been there 28 years. You've had a few days to be able to draw your own analysis of this. You should understand the entire process. You talked about being on the team, perhaps in Georgia. You have talked about your experience in this. You've talked about the professional nature of the agency. That I don't doubt. But the director, just like it was when I ran my operations at AT&T, was responsible for making sure they worked. And in business, it either works or it doesn't work. There's no in between. It either works or it does not work. And your job as the, in essence, administrator, the director, is to make sure it looks right and works. And I've not heard you say one thing about my analysis is I have asked these questions. It's always, I've got to sit back and wait for someone else to decide that. So I'm going to ask you a question that maybe you can answer. Have any employees been disciplined for their role in Butler, PA incident?
No, sir, not at this time. I am asking those questions.
So
I'm sure.
no employee has been disciplined and no employee has been placed in any position that would place their job in jeopardy nor
Had to be
standing in the agency.
Damn.
We are still in the process of
That's
interviewing
not what I
people.
asked. You're the person that
All right, folks. So breaking news, huge news. Joe Biden is out. He's now announced he is out. All of the race just got upended. Not leaving because he's seen it.
Right,
He's
look
leaving because he's
look how disheveled Ben Shapiro looks right now. This is my opinion that he is full of shit. He is definitely controlled.
agency with 28 years, or do you have
This guy, Mr. Higgins, or this is Mr. Sessions.
support?
I see that some.
The special agent in charge not doing their job? Was the shooter was the shooter given extra time? Was the sniper doing their job? I mean, these are things that people who've been around for 28 years can analyze quickly. I watched it live on TV and then within minutes saw a number of facts and factors that would have and should have been known by people who were there. You've got 28 years. You're showing up here telling us and the American public, well, I've got to wait for the final answer. What is your evaluation?
I'm asking those same questions.
Well, no, you're before the
And I
committee. Tell us what went wrong. A special agent in charge, the person who was there. Tell us and don't try and play a shell game with us. Do you have the ability to effectively, as the director of this agency, to understand what went wrong and at least tell us, I do or don't know what I'm doing? And we come away with, and I'm not asking for you to resign. I'm asking for you, if you've got this experience, then you should be able to say to us, we know what we did wrong. It was a failure in our system, and we're immediately making these corrections. That's why you're having a difficult time with this group of members of Congress, because we saw it too. We've seen the things, but you are the 28-year expert. You are the person that, and only you, that can make the changes. And I hear you say, well, I've got to wait for a final report before I, at 28 years experience. That is why we think what you're doing, the answers you're giving us are not correct, and you are not using your professional expertise. Mr. Chairman, I will allow her to respond.
I am asking those same questions, sir, and I assure you, when I have a full and complete report of exactly what happened, there will be accountability, and we will make changes.
But before I recognize the question, just out of curiosity, Director, it's been 9 days. Every American wants these questions answered. Do you have a ballpark estimate of what Mr. Sessions asked you would be able to answer
So I can tell you,
time-wise?
I can tell you on our mission assurance internal investigation, we are targeting to have that completed within 60 days. There's also an external investigation that is going to be taking place. There are a number of Office of Inspector General investigations as well, and we are working in concert. And then, of course, there's the Department of Justice, FBI criminal investigation.
Chair recognizes Ms. Ocasio-Cortez from New York.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Cheadle, respectfully, what you had just laid out about 60 days. We are currently in the midst of an especially concentrated presidential campaign in the moment. That is also paired with, of course, elections happening across the country. They're happening in about 100 days.
Well,
So the notion of a report coming out in 60 days when the threat environment is so high in the United States, irrespective of party, is not acceptable. And I think it's very important to understand that. This is not theater. This is not about jockeying. This is about the safety of some of the most highly targeted and valued targets internationally and domestically in the United States of America. So the idea that a report will be finalized in 60 days, let alone prior to any actionable decisions that would be made, is simply not acceptable. It has been 10 days since an assassination attempt on a former president of the United States, regardless of party. There need to be answers. Again, this party, this committee, this is not a moment of theater. We have to make policy decisions.
Acts like she cares about Trump. You know, she's also she's in the same category as JD Vance, in my opinion. They found her. She supposedly is working as a bartender at some place. She was also going to college at the time. Then all of a sudden, now she's becoming a big name in news and politics, just like JD Vance. And it seems too coincidental. And they're both. They pick these people they pick them when they're young, and it's kind of like, if you've ever seen the movie Vice, it stars Christian Bale as fucking the dude that shot the guy, his friend, in the face. He was Dick Cheney. It's the movie about Dick Cheney's life, and that shows you how they all met back in the 60s, back whenever they're still kind of young, and it shows you like the whole deal. It's crazy. Like, they pick these guys whenever they pick them whenever they're in college and they're young, and they groom them to grow when they're old men to become leaders, and women too, like her.
It's outside of our secure perimeter, yes.
Now, that building was, I believe, 500. How far away was that building from the president?
It was approximately 200 yards.
200 yards. Now, the individual used an AR-15 in order to act out his assassination attempt. An AR-15 has a range of about 400 to 600 yards. My question is, why does the Secret Service perimeter, why is the Secret Service protective perimeter?
Real quick pause. Connecting the dots is going to be worth $2. And we'll let this creature here, we'll let her talk.
Of the perimeter, I'm not going to speak to specifics, but there are a number of factors that are taken into account when we determine our perimeter. Some of it has to do with terrain, some of it has to do with buildings, some of it has to do with assets and resources that are available.
I'm sorry for being so erratic, but y'all hear this? Y'all heard the sound effects?
Prevent an AR-15, which is one of the most common weapons used in mass shootings, from being able.
How would I know that they would use this situation as a thing to help further their cause of making AR-15s illegal? And why the fuck is he going to be bringing an AR-15 on a sniping mission anyway? You know, it's all kind of weird.
Some of those buildings.
As a person who has experienced an enormous amount of threat incidents, including incidents that have never been reported publicly, there is a common pattern that happens here, whether it's Secret Service, FBI, Capitol Police, local departments. After a critical security failure, we often hear there will be an independent investigation. That independent investigation gets set up. Usually the expectation is between 2 to 3 months after the incident, and then nothing really occurs from there. The report is usually not satisfactory to the questions that are usually being raised here. And most importantly, corrective action is rarely taken. If I were to state anything that I think is profoundly important, is that we need to have answers to the public. Ideally, I would encourage you and the agency to be more forthright with the members that still have yet to have their questioning, because the public deserves to have full confidence, and the stakes are too high. The violence that could break out in this political moment, regardless of party, in the event of someone getting hurt, constitutes a national security threat to the entire country. Thank you, and I yield back.
Could I go back to something you
Yes,
said?
please, feel free, Director.
Ma'am, if I could just speak to something you said at the outset when you started your questioning. I want to assure you and everyone on this committee that I'm not waiting for a report to take action. We have been conducting analysis all along, and we have been adding additional features to our security details since this incident occurred.
And I'd hope you can highlight and illuminate what some of those are in the event of other members questioning as well.
Very good. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Biggs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I request unanimous consent for that photo to go into the official record.
Without objection to ordered.
Thank you, Director. Your agency has a no-fail mission, and on Saturday, July 13th, your agency spectacularly failed. The failure resulted in the death of Corey Comprador and serious injury to two other rally attendees, David Dutch and James Copenhaver, besides the injuries to President Trump. It is unfathomable that a 20-year-old on the radar of Secret Service and local law enforcement before President Trump went on stage was able to climb onto the roof of a building with a rifle and fire off multiple rounds before he was neutralized. Was Mr. Crooks acting alone?
Again, I would have to refer you to the FBI's investigation.
Was he just a lone gunman?
I would have to refer you to the FBI's investigation for motive.
What did the Technical Services Division determine was going to be the event perimeter?
Those are questions that we are asking, and we are.
You're sitting
Yeah.
here today. Come on, Director. Everybody said this. You knew you were going to be asked that question because it's been asked multiple times. So this is an easy one. What did they determine was going to be the event perimeter? So you should know that. I mean, this is not, I got to wait till someone else tells me. What was it?
Again, I don't want to speak to specifics of the event.
Okay,
that took place.
this is a specific.
I understand.
This is a specific that you ought to know. As someone who said the buck stops with me, I'm going to stay in my job. I'm going to give the answers to the American people, and I know what happened. Except for you're not going to tell us. And you're not going to tell the American people. And you yourself said in an interview that foments this notion of conspiracy theories. Guess what? When you sit here and repeatedly tell people, hey, I have to wait, as it frustrated everybody on this committee, guess what? It undermines your credibility and whether you're really going to get to it. So I'm going to ask you again, what did the Technical Service Division determine was going to be the event perimeter?
We are still gathering reports. We are interviewing individuals.
You know what it is, though. No, you're just not going to tell us, right?
When I have those details, I will most certainly share them.
The only thing better than wearing a well-made gun belt is knowing you got it on sale. For a limited time only, our handmade in the United States tactical gun belt is
Rally.
I do not have that information at this time.
So, how many holds? I mean, so most of us here have been in events, and Secret Service has been there. There's been security, and I can't tell you how many times we've said there's going to be a security hold right here. So we're going to wait, and we wait to 1 or 2 or 3 minutes, and yet we're hearing from you apparently that there were no holds in place. So ever instituted here with President Trump's going on stage. And you said, and this is, I think, connected with this, you said they hadn't adjudicated the shooter to be a threat. He was adjudicated to be a suspicious person, even though we've got some dynamic video that Mr. Krishnamurthy put on the video for us. So I guess my question for you is, and I think you answered this, I just want to see if you're consistent with what you said about an hour and a half ago. What do you do if a suspicious person is identified by the agency?
So at a number of our events, it is not unusual
I know it's not unusual. What do you do?
Those individuals that are
We have got a legendary creature, Kylox, the visionary inventor. Let's go. Some of these cards can be worth a couple $100. And that's where you get the money on.
identify and interview that individual.
They were sent to interview the individual who's scampered up in camo on top of a roof within 130 yards of his target. And did your team get there? When did your team get there to conduct that interview?
I don't have the details on the timeline. It is my
So
Kylox is selling for up to $3.
and they're going to interview him. And you described that earlier as an investigation. Why didn't they?
Fucking shit, it's Garrett. What's up, big dog? I didn't mean to press that. On, yeah, I was gonna do it.
The team there, and you can't answer that. And this gets to one of my finer points, Mr. Chairman, if I can make it, and that is, we can have these kind of interview sessions, 5 minutes. Everybody gets a kiss at the pig, 5 minutes, and she gets to stonewall us, not deliver answers. So we say, okay, we're going to put together a congressional committee, a blue ribbon committee. Same crap will happen. I am calling, and I'll support that. But I will tell you this, I am calling on the speaker to give us and put together a truly independent commission of qualified former Secret Service agents, presidential and VIP protective services people who can actually conduct this kind of investigation and give us real answers, because I don't think you're going to give us those answers. You should have come today ready to give us answers. I call upon you to resign today. And I also would say I've got a bunch of UC requests, if I can go ahead, Mr. Chairman.
Proceed with the request.
Thank you. I apologize. It might take,
That's all right. Go ahead.
It might take a moment.
Very important.
Anthony Guglielmi, the Secret Service spokesman, one from him.
Without objection, so ordered.
Article, U.S. Secret Service says it previously denied Trump requests for additional resources, New York Times reports.
Without objection, so ordered.
Secret Service says it denied earlier Trump requests for more federal resources.
Without objection, so ordered.
Secret Service acknowledges denying some past requests by Trump's campaign for tighter security.
Without objection, so ordered.
Preliminary findings by Senator Ron Johnson and his committee.
Without objection, so ordered.
Articles entitled, Notice Anything Different About Trump's Secret Service detailed. Next, former Biden official corrects herself after saying Dems must turn their fire on Donald Trump to beat him. Secret Service director says buck stops with her, but she will not resign. Disney Star Wars Mark Hamill cracks joke about Trump's ear bandage following assassination attempt. Biden, I haven't engaged in inciting rhetoric. Trump has. I'm just talking about the threat to democracy. Piece called Who is Secret Service Chief Kimberly Cheadle. Charlemagne the God says Trump's solely responsible for violent rhetoric that led to attempt on his life. Video actress Amanda Seals pushes conspiracy theory Donald Trump assassination trip was staged. Report, Secret Service identified rooftop as a potential vulnerability days before the rally. Watch, BlackRock removes ad showing former President Donald Trump's would-be assassin. Why does the Biden administration have 100% confidence Secret Service after assassination attempt? Secret Service director, we didn't put snipers on the roof because it was kind of sloped. Here's what Thomas Matthew Crooks did in the days leading up to Trump assassination attempt. Secret Service director under scrutiny for diversity initiatives after Trump assassination attempt. The official story on Trump shooting makes no sense at all. Andrew McCabe says Trump assassination.
Mr. Chairman, point of order. I'm happy to assent to all of them. I just so as to facilitate.
You don't want me to read?
proceedings.
Is it too tedious?
Well, we're not even really hearing them anyway. So if we could,
Is it?
it's up to you, Mr. Chairman.
You would like me to I'll slow it down. I was probably going too fast. Secret Service's explanations for security failures ahead of Trump assassination attempt are not adding up. U.S. reportedly received intel of Iranian plot to assassinate President Trump. What WTH? Secret Service now saying that they didn't put any agents on the roof because slight slope was too dangerous. Report, U.S. officials received intel of Iranian plot to assassinate Donald Trump before Crooks' attempt. Exclusive GOP rep Cloud. Homeland Security Agency is interfering in House's assassination investigation. Why Trump's raised fist after surviving assassination attempt is triggering the liberal media. Questions swirl over the security lapse at Trump rally, reviving old concerns about Secret Service. Secret Service scrambles to shift blame after Trump shooting as backlash hits hard. Nobody contacted me. Must see 6-camera split screen of assassination attempt captures everything shooter was in open 2+ minutes. Murillo, 5 reasons you should be angry. Breaking, shooter spotted up to 30 minutes before firing, reported multiple times. Pictures taken, no one stopped him. Cheadle calls the 30 minutes between noticing and neutralizing shooter a very short period of time. Secret Service director says buck stops with me on Trump's assassination attempt but won't resign.
Mr. Biggs, we'll stop right there. We can retake them on the next one. I know there are more, but without objection, we'll enter into the record all of those, and we'll take up the others after the next speaker. Chair now recognizes Ms. Brown from Ohio for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I first want to highlight certain comments from Ranking Member Raskin, my colleagues on both sides of the aisle, President Biden and Vice President Harris, and that is political violence is completely unacceptable in this country, full stop. It is an assault on our democracy itself, and I am devastated by this attack on a candidate for the president, for the office of the highest office in the land, and continue to pray for the victims of this shooting and their families. As someone who has known gun violence firsthand, no one should have to experience the pain of losing a loved one to weapons of war. It is deeply unfortunate political violence has become far too common. Whether it is the deadly attack on the Capitol on January 6th, the assault on Speaker Pelosi's husband, or the threats of violence against election workers, we all must work to condemn political violence and tone down the rhetoric. So, Director Cheadle, on behalf of the hardworking men and women of the Secret Service, can you give us some perspective as into what goes into securing an event like the rally? Like, how much time do you have to prepare?
Thank you for the question. Generally, when we receive notification that there's going to be an event taking place at a venue, the advance team assignments are made, and there is a 5-day process to conduct walkthroughs, coordinate with staff, local staff, and whether it be campaign staff or the protectee staff, and then with local law enforcement on where the perimeter is going to be, the size and the scope of the event, how many attendees there are going to be, if it's an indoor rally, outdoor rally, what sort of assets are available locally, what sort of assets the Secret Service can bring to bear, and what the scope of the event that the staff is trying to accomplish.
So to that point, how many agents were recommended or requested as opposed to how many were assigned?
So I'm not going to get into specifics of how many were assigned, but those numbers that were requested were provided.
And how many local?
I want to listen to what she says real quick by this card. I think we just hit it big just now.
That 5-day preparation.
So there were a number of local agents from the local office, as well as agents from the former Trump detail that were involved in that advanced process.
Do we have a number?
I do have a number. I'm not going to release that number in this setting.
You're not making this easy for us. This is a shocking incident on the former president's life and an appalling instance of political violence and a threat to our democratic values. I'm thankful that the former president is on the mend. And again, I'm grieving for the family and friends of Corey Compatore, who lost a loved one in this shooting and now know the unbearable pain of gun violence. I really hope this serves as a reminder about our responsibility to attack policies, not personalities, to be honest and truthful, and to treat one another with dignity, respect, and thoughtfulness. And with that, I yield my remaining time to Ranking Member Raskin.
Thank you, Ms. Brown, for those very powerful and
A Dragon Commander deck now with a Niv Mizzet Guild Pack deck. Look, this is danger. Deals combat damage to player. It does X damage any target. Target player draws X cards and you gain X life, or X the number of different color pairs among permanents you control that are exactly 2 colors. So Niv Mizzet, that's a dragon. We're making a dragon.
mass shooting. And we certainly don't want an
Money on it though. They talk about mass shooting. I knew that they're gonna be bringing a mass shooting. Let's listen closely what they talk about it. But this dragon deck, I'm gonna resell this dragon deck for like $150, or I might give it away.
So this is deadly serious business. The vice ranking member pointed out that a report in 60 days won't do it for us because we have a responsibility. Members of Congress have a responsibility to take action now if there's anything we can do to prevent this. So my question for you is, what is informing your operational decisions right now that you've invoked without a report? Can you tell us what right now?
I'm gonna start playing BT Online again.
Certainly, and I appreciate that question. I don't want to make any preliminary judgments on what happened on this particular day, but I can tell you that we have looked at, as we did immediately in the aftermath, what the security plan for the Republican National Convention was going to be, and we made adjustments to the interior of the perimeter there. We looked at the protectees that we have here in the Washington, D.C. area and our protective sites, and we did make some adjustments to their security posture. And as we continue to move through the next several weeks, even yesterday with the announcement of the president no longer running, we have made adjustments to the vice president's detail. We are already prepared for an eventual VP nominee, and we continue to make those assessments. I think it just shows how dynamic the environment is that this agency works in every day.
So you've made the same kinds of common sense judgments.
I heard that she was messing shit up at Pepsi.
Members of the public and members of Congress are asking about right
Yes.
now.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
And before I recognize Ms. Mace, I have to say, Director, we're pretty close to the halfway point during this. You answered more questions with an ABC reporter.
The Republicans have been attacking on the Democrats for what all the crazy shit people have been saying about Trump the past 10 years almost. And it sounds like the Democrats are using this as the opportunity to talk about AR-15s, guns, gun violence, policy changes.
And we expect you to answer the questions. Chair now recognizes Ms. Mace from South Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Cheadle, the American people are watching, and they're wondering if there are any questions you can answer honestly today. So, Director Cheadle, I have a series of questions, very specific questions. I want very specific answers. Most of my questions are going to demand a yes or no answer. Do you understand?
I do.
Okay, my first question.
Oh,
Both sides of the aisle today have asked for your resignation. Would you like to use my 5 minutes to draft your resignation letter? Yes or no?
No, thank you.
Was this a colossal failure?
It was a failure.
Yes or no? Was it a colossal failure is the question. Yes or no?
I have admitted this is a terrible.
This is a yes or no series of questions. Was this a colossal failure? Yes or no?
Yes.
Was this tragedy preventable? Yes or no?
Yes.
Has the Secret Service been transparent with this committee?
Yes.
Would you say the fact that we had to issue a subpoena to get you to show up today as being transparent? Yes or no?
I have always been.
Yes or no? You didn't want to answer the question. We had to issue a subpoena to get you to show up today. That is not transparent, by the way. You stated earlier, Secret Service is not political. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Would you say leaking your opening statement to Punchbowl News, Politico's Playbook, and Washington Post several hours before you sent it to this committee as being political? Yes or no?
I have no idea how my statement got out.
Well, that's bullshit. So, Mr. Chairman, I would like to ask unanimous consent to enter into the record articles by Punchbowl News, Political Playbook, Washington Post, all done at 5:24 a.m., 6:12 a.m., 6:34 a.m., a solid 3 to 4 hours before this committee got your statement.
Without objection to ordered.
Okay. Is the Secret Service fully cooperating with our committee?
Yes.
Okay, you say you're fully cooperating with this committee. On July 15th, this committee sent you a list of demands of information that we wanted. Has the Secret Service provided this committee a complete list of all law enforcement personnel that were there that day? Have you done that? Have you provided a list to the Oversight Committee? Yes or
I will
no?
have to get back to you on that.
That is a no. Have you provided all audio and video recordings in your possession to this committee, as we asked on July 15th? Yes or no?
I would have to get back to you.
That is a no. You're full of shit today. You're just being completely dishonest.
Mr.
Chairman,
Completely dishonest.
Mr. Chairman.
Chairman, I point of
I'm
Come
gonna
on.
we have to
continue.
maintain decorum in this committee,
Any,
no matter
have
how
you provided
upset we
any
get.
and all memos to this committee that we've asked you on July 15th? Have you provided all memorandums within the Secret Service?
I would have to get back to you on
That is a no. You are being dishonest or lying. Like you're being dishonest.
They probably practiced all this a few days ahead of time in advance so they get ready for it. You know, and yeah, they definitely met at Waffle House. They probably met at some kind of weird sex orgy and then Waffle House.
Repeatedly to answer our questions. This isn't hard. From the Secret Service related to that day and that rally. Have you provided this committee? We've asked for this information on July 15th. Have you provided any of this information that this committee has asked of the Secret Service? Any of it?
I'll have to get back to you. on
Have
that.
you even read this letter that we sent you? Did you even read this?
Yes.
Okay. And you have said you don't know, you have no idea. Well, the answer is no. We haven't gotten a single document or piece of information or data from you or your agency in related to the rally that we have asked you for. So, is this,
We finally got another big set. Definitely the biggest hit we've gotten from this whole set. I've been getting cards from the set for since I got into Magic again a month or two ago. Worth $6.
failure?
At this time, none.
How many Secret Service personnel have been required to take a refresher course on how not to let people shoot Donald Trump?
Our personnel are currently operational. We are examining the facts of this investigation, and we will make the changes necessary.
What time did law enforcement become aware that there was an individual on the roof with a clear line of sight to President Trump?
I am still verifying timelines.
Of course, 9 days in, you have no answers. How many minutes went by between the time law enforcement saw and took photos of crooks and the shooting? How many minutes?
I am still verifying timelines.
57 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Before I recognize Ms. Stansberry, I believe I want to recognize Mr. Mfume for a unanimous consent.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I beg your indulgence. I meant to do this earlier. I'd like to have unanimous consent that it be submitted for the record. The 2023 ranking of best and worst workplaces in the federal government, compiled by the Office of Personnel Management, which shows the United States Secret Service coming in, again, as I said earlier, 413th out of 459 sub-agencies. And this appears in the July 17th edition of Government Executive.
Without objections ordered. Chair now recognizes Ms. Stansberry from New Mexico.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to start by just saying that part of why you have bipartisan agreement here on the dais about the severity and importance of this hearing is because this is not just a single shooting. This is about national security and the security of our democracy. It's not just one operational failure. This is about our public officials safe. And what does that signal to our country and to the world about American security and the ability of our officials to do their job safely? So I want to start by saying thank you to all of our brave men and women who are in the uniform, whether it's the Secret Service or local law enforcement, who put their lives on the line. I think obviously we honor their service, but this is really about operational failures and what it means for our country at large. And I also want to reaffirm that we must condemn unequivocally political violence of any kind, not just political violence, and that it cannot be tolerated in this democracy. And also to offer my prayers for the slain Fire Chief Corey Comprator, and also prayers for those who've been injured. Now, I think, you know, the tone of this hearing is, how is it that a 20-year-old young man with a gun that was legally purchased by his father could, on the day of a rally, go to a gun shop, legally purchase ammunition, show up to a secured site, and then not only attempt an assassination of a political figure, but kill and injure 2 others? How could this happen? I'm not asking yet. I think we've had a lot of testimony here today. I want to talk a little bit about the timeline. Now, here's what we know, and I know, Director, you were also on the call that we had a few days ago with the FBI and other law enforcement, so I respect that you are not able to share, based on your testimony, some of the details that are currently being investigated, but I know you were on the call because I heard you on the call and you heard them too. So I'm going to lay out the timeline a little bit. On July 3rd, the rally was announced that it was going to be in Butler. On July 6th, 3 days later, we know that the shooter searched for dates for Trump and DNC events. On July 7th, so this is 4 days after the announcement, the shooter went to the site. He actually physically went to the site. On July 12th, the shooter went to a gun range where he and his dad regularly go and practiced shooting. And the next day, on July 13th, he went to the site again before the rally began. We know that he then went and searched online for a gun store, where he went and he purchased 50 rounds of ammunition, went home, got his father's AR, which was legally purchased, and returned to the venue. At 5 p.m. that evening, this is more than an hour before Donald Trump actually took the stage that evening, local law enforcement were made aware that there was a suspicious man. In fact, at 5:20, local law enforcement flagged that he had a rangefinder, and they radioed their concerns and sent around pictures of the individual. At 5:40, 20 minutes before local law enforcement actually identified the shooter, and at 5:51, Secret Service was notified of the suspicious person by the state police, and 1 minute later they distributed that information. That was before Donald Trump even took the stage. That was 11 minutes before he took the stage. So the Secret Service was aware that there was a suspicious person. At 6:03, he took the stage. At 6:09, rally goers, as was shown in the video, identified this gentleman climbing on the roof.
She's beautiful, isn't she?
Ahoy, mateys! Feast your eyes on me pirate's voyage and pigeon forge.
Pirate's Voyage, the most breathtaking dinner show ever. It's an eye-popping spectacle of beauty, action, fire, and water.
Shooter on his cell phone the day of the shooting. He searched for explosives. He searched high-level officials. So the American people want to know, how did a 20-year-old young man with access to a military-style weapon actually bring it on to an unsecured perimeter, who for days had been planning a mass shooting event? And I think that, Madam Director, with all due respect, the answers that we've received here in this hearing today are completely unsatisfactory. How could this happen? We need answers. We need answers, not just for the family.
They probably were into dark, kind of like this, the way dark shit looks. It started off, I was trying to paint like my blonde friend that used to be here, but then turned into that. That's how her soul, that was a reflection of her true soul. And I like hanging it up inside of the bathroom as well. I have a couple, I can't find my other things that I've been working on. I don't know if y'all remember that whole chapter in my life, but she was an absolute maniac, and glad to be over with that. I've got a very good woman I'm with now, absolutely in love, who supports me, we support each other, and it's a good time. It's a good time. But yeah, that's how that painting deal even got started for that one. But no, I have a few more if I can find them. But like I said, I'm thinking about trying to make the bathroom protectors a thing. It's called bathroom protectors. Let me show. I was using this as my bathroom protector whenever I had a PO box. When I had a PO box, fucking this guy Prince Steve. Shout out Prince Steve. He sent this to me. All right, and I'm gonna hang it up here in my little office room. Shout out to Prince Steve. He sent me a drawing of Sonic the Hedgehog that I can't find. This photo is awesome. This is badass. It kind of sucks though, because I don't know if you can see right there in Prince Steve's face. This fucking look at how he's sitting on that bench. But I'll fucking hang this up with pride. Nah, if you see on his face, he has damn. I dropped some dabs on this picture when I was high looking at it. I was like, what the fuck? I'm like, Prince Steve. Go check his channel out though. It's this Steve 290. I've seen it before. Tried to find it. He's in all kinds of shit. But Prince Steve, y'all. Good. The spirits here or living people. You care to explain that a little bit more?
Yes.
Okay. Do you think it's a problem that the Americans' trust in the federal government is an all-time low? Do you think that's a problem?
I bet you and mom got along.
I don't know why you're quibbling with my word. Is it a problem or is it not?
I think the American public deserves to have trust in their federal government.
Okay. I don't know why you're being difficult. I'm just, it's a simple question. Are you concerned about the increasing prevalence of conspiracy theories going on out there right now?
Yes.
I am too. You've been incredibly inconsistent with your answers before this committee today and what you were willing to reveal. You've acknowledged that the shooter was identified with a rangefinder, that President Trump's detail was sufficient for the threats he faced from Iran, that certain details were erroneously reported in your words.
Thank you, ladies.
But you haven't been willing to provide any information about the decision to place the building in question outside the perimeter, the explosives placed in the shooter's vehicle, the use of a drone by the shooter, or when exactly the Secret Service identified the shooter as a threat rather than merely suspicious. What is your standard today for what you are willing to answer and what you are not? Because you've been inconsistent.
I'm certain that you can understand that some of the information that's been provided to you thus far has come from the FBI's investigation and has come from information that we have released. I want to make sure that information that is being provided to this committee is consistent and is factual.
But the question about the drone that the chairman asked at the beginning of the hearing, he said, do you know this information? And you acknowledge that, yes, you do know the information, you just don't want to tell us. I guess my question is that if you wanted to wait till the end of the investigation to draw conclusions, which you've acknowledged you're not, you're drawing conclusions right now and making changes. But if that was your standard, that you want to wait till the end of the investigation to draw conclusions, okay, at least you would be consistent in that. But what we're wanting to know today, and what would dispel some of the conspiracy theories out there, what would increase trust with the American people, is for you to let facts out, for you to tell us what you know. And I want to understand from you, why is that a problem? Why is it inconsistent with a quality investigation to release to the American people today, at least the information that you know for sure? Because you certainly know for sure more information than you're willing to give us today.
I have released that there was a failure and that there are gaps that we need to make sure that they don't happen again.
That's not acceptable. That's not enough. That doesn't quell any conspiracy theories out there. In your 27 years of experience, would you have been concerned about it?
They say conspiracy theory, like they're trying to make the term conspiracy theory into something evil. conspiracy theorists are like Nazis.
Is it true that at 5:45 p.m., approximately 18 minutes before President Trump took the stage, the Beaver County Emergency Services Unit noticed the shooter on the roof and photographed him? Is that a fact or not?
That is the information that I have from the FBI's report, yes.
You haven't been willing to share whether or when this was communicated to the Secret Service, so I'd like to get into the difference between suspicious activity and threatening activity. Is it suspicious or threatening if an individual is seen around the perimeter with a rangefinder? Is that just suspicious?
That could be termed as suspicious.
If that same individual with the rangefinder is found on a rooftop, is that still just suspicious, or is that considered threatening?
That could be termed still as suspicious.
All right, my time is over. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you. Chair now recognizes Mr. Frost from Florida.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. And obviously, I want to start by stressing that political violence is always unacceptable, and acknowledging that this is still an ongoing.
$3 for Assassin's Trophy, guys. So we're starting to get some motherfucking.
That an unsophisticated gunman was able to secure his perch and take a shot at a former president despite multiple layers of security and intelligence are not lost on me. Before I came to Congress, I used to work advance for a major political candidate and have interacted with many different law enforcement agencies on large political events like the one that just happened. How many times was the Secret Service alerted about a suspicious person at the July 13th campaign event prior to the first shot being shot?
I don't have an exact number to share with you today, but from what I've been able to discern, somewhere between 2 and 5 times there was some sort of communication about a suspicious individual.
To the Secret Service specifically. Mm-hmm. According to reports, the shooter was photographed twice by security officers prior to the shooting. A police officer saw the shooter on the ground and reported him with a photograph as a suspicious person. Multiple local law enforcement officers identified the shooter, radioed that he was acting suspiciously near the event's magnetometers. A local law enforcement tactical team saw the shooter on a roof and notified other security services and also photographed him. One police officer who photographed the shooter saw him scoping out the roof and carrying a rangefinder. My question is, and you've answered this, but why, or you haven't answered this, why wasn't the event paused right then?
Again, I'm not clear on the timeline of when the Secret Service shift and the counter sniper were notified.
But earlier, Madam Director, earlier you said that the Secret Service would have paused the rally if they identified a threat.
Correct.
So why wasn't it paused?
Because I have to assume that they did not know that there was a threat when they brought the president out on the stage.
I feel like this is a breakdown in communication between local law enforcement, you all, and other actors at the rally. And again, as someone who's worked on these, I understand that there's multiple people with multiple decision, with the ability to make different decisions on the ground. I've taken over the last week, I've spoken with a lot of folks in local law enforcement in my district and across the country that I've worked with before, and other people have brought up concerns around being able to communicate with with Secret Service during these big events and having their flags taken seriously. I do believe that if Secret Service believed that there was a legitimate threat, that they would have paused the rally. My concern is before that something was flagged and it wasn't taken as seriously as it should have been taken. So I think this shows an issue with communication. And I want to know, Madam Director, what you intend to do to fix that, not in 60 days, but now. We're in the middle of a president.
Let me pause this fucking dude. So this is worth $15. I've gotten into Magic again. So you get the packs, and that's what I'm gonna start doing. I'm gonna start cracking packs on the channel, and then I'm gonna start incorporating making the decks, and then I'm gonna incorporate selling them online as well. So you make a deck, and then you can go to eBay and you can sell it. Some of these cards are worth like $15, some of them are worth $20, some of them are worth a couple $100. All right, and now look, This Bristly bill, $25, and I got it. And what I spent to get it was technically like $5, and I could go resell it at a store for the $25, get my money back, still enjoy all these other cards. This one is also Magic the Gathering. It's interesting because it's a story. If the books follow the story, and the stories fucking very interesting themselves. And it's been going on for 30. The story has been going on for 30 years, continuously, nonstop. Alright. And that'll only stop whenever people stop buying the cards. It is kind of a money trap, but it's interesting with the hobby.
Excuse.
Okay. Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair now recognizes Mr. Fallon from Texas.
How did a 20-year-old loner with a week's notice pick the absolute best location to assassinate President Trump when the entire Secret Service missed it? Director Cheadle, in your leadership, your agency.
The cards came first, and that caused me to dive into a rabbit hole of just the game, this universe, the lore behind it all. I've been into it now. I got into Magic whenever I was 25, so that's a little old for it, but these championships you can win money at. And your boy, he's going to be practicing with his buddies online. I'm trying to get into that. So many different little things, so many different things going on. The stories, the stuff written on the card, like let's say this for instance. See that little bottom text? It says, only too late did the agency custodians realize the device had not been activated. It was just waiting for the right trigger. So that's from the story. You know, who doesn't? You know, like fucking. Yeah, I got into it, and here I am now. And it's definitely I had at one point I had over 10 to like 10,000 cards if I'm not mistaken. And fucking almost all of the books, so a lot of books, and the graphic novels, like all of them. But I had traded them. I was fiending for cigarettes so bad, and I wanted to smoke weed so bad. It had been days since I'd smoked bud or cigarette. So I had traded all my Magic cards and all my shit, like all the books, for a piece of weed the size of my pinky nail for that pack of cigarettes, which is one of my life's regrets. But I am trying to get back to that original collection. You know what I'm saying? That's sometimes it happens. Sometimes we do things that we regret for sure. Whenever I was younger, I visited the pawn shop quite a bit. I'd get badass stuff, and then I'd always end up going back there and selling it. And thank God, praise the Lord. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to the top J. Ain't nothing like that's had to happen in a while. The name of the game is called Magic the Gathering, and the book series would also be Magic the Gathering. But each book follows different. Over 30 years, the story has encompassed thousands of years, like 20 or 30, 40, 50 thousands of years of timeline events. This is one of the most recent books. I read through it pretty quick. It is kind of high level nerd shit, but not too bad. This shit's not, honestly, this shit is better than to do this is better than to do crack and say heroin. You know, don't do any of that stuff. Fucking get on some Magic the Gathering, you know. You know, that's why I think I might be slightly autistic as well, though, because they say that autists, they have, whenever they're interested in stuff, they dive very deeply into it. And there is a lot of math. There's a lot of math in Magic the Gathering. Embrace it. Well, might as well. You know what I'm saying? There's not enough autists out there who are openly embracing it. This might be fucked up, and that's not making fun of autistic people. It is kind of funny joke. What if I were to change my name to the autistic? To the To the autistic prepper. A very zen wisdom to always get from you.
Year. That's a 94% success rate. And that shooter was a better shot than me.
I believe. Better shot.
It is a miracle Torre's life is over because that damn shooter made it on the roof. And it wasn't the roof that was dangerous. It was a nut job on top of the roof. You know what else is dangerous? I believe your horrifying ineptitude.
So it's kind of like, honestly, y'all, it's kind of just like us talking now. I feel like last year, I don't know if you remember some of the lives I was doing up until I look back, I've had to delete a lot of my stuff because it was almost very cringe. It was almost very cringe, a lot of the some of the stuff I'd say. And you guys have been there, you've seen me, y'all have seen me cry. Y'all seen me cry before, kind of shit. You know what I'm saying? So, and now I feel like I've recovered from all that. I feel like I've evolved from all that. But that is something I kind of will always be embarrassed about, but I don't give a fuck. I'm like Mel Gibson. I'm like Mel Gibson in this bitch. Like I don't care what people are thinking. But I definitely anyway, no, that was some shit for sure. It is very human. I was going through a lot of shit too. But as we were discussing, people they develop different, I feel like I didn't learn, I know like shit, like, reading all this shit, but I didn't know like basic adult things. You know what I'm saying? And that's stuff that you had to kind of learn on your own, in my case. But I don't hold nothing in the past, I don't ever think about that stuff. And you should not live in the past, for sure. Yeah, straight up. Yeah, exactly. I don't feel no shame for it. Definitely feel, though, I feel almost as if it's like, damn, it makes me feel kind of like at the motherfuckers that would make fun of someone for that. It's kind of like, damn, fuck you. And it's definitely, it was a fucking long year for me. I had a damn good year, though, I tell you what, and I've been having a good year so far as well. Been reconnecting with you guys. I got this new stuff going on. I've been with this new woman for almost a year. Getting fucking jobs been really good. This channel's been growing. So everything's on the up and up, it would seem. It's got to keep faith in God and keep everything going, the way that I have it. It's very easy to slip as a human being, but wisdom does come with age. Wisdom does come with age, though, for sure. But discernment sometimes is lacking. Yeah, man. Let's see what else these fucking guys are saying.
Determine exactly what those failures or failure was, so that we can make sure that the Secret Service is stronger after this.
So we've heard a lot today that you can't answer because it's an ongoing investigation, that you're still figuring out the details, and that you won't answer basic questions. You've said 60 days for the investigation, but I simply don't think that's acceptable. Do you really plan to keep avoiding questions and the American people's questions, ours and the American people's questions, for the next 60 days?
I'm not avoiding questions. I want to make sure that I am providing factual and accurate information.
Certainly, but is there no in between, right? Between what is obviously a fact and what you can surmise from the details that you already have?
I assure you, when I have a full and complete report of what took place on that day, I will certainly come back and make that available.
Certainly. Studies indicate that the United States is experiencing increasing levels of political violence and tension. Does the Secret Service see increasing political violence as a threat to its work? And if so, how is the Secret Service adapting its strategies and protocols to account for increasing political violence?
We are constantly evaluating the threats that we receive and monitoring that, and we make adjustments on a daily basis to our protectees based on what those threats are and what actions we need to take.
Yes or no? Do you believe that stricter controls on?
No, y'all have been there the whole time. Y'all have been there the whole time. I'll take two what she's having. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, but they y'all been there the whole time too. You know what I'm saying? There has been people I have noticed that have kind of not been there, but I've noticed that all of y'all have been here watching and laying down support through this whole process of growth, and it will not be forgotten.
At what time was Secret Service aware of the active threat against President Trump? Director, what time?
So the Secret Service was aware that there was an individual who had been identified as suspicious, and that individual was attempting to be tracked down.
At what time?
I don't have a specific timeline other than to tell
Director,
you,
it's been 9 days.
I
At
understand
what
that.
time?
I want to make sure that I give you factual information, sir.
Director, have you talked to the agents on the ground that day?
Yes, I have.
You've talked to all of them.
Mhm.
Your senior team has talked to every agent that was on the ground that day.
Yes, we have.
Have they all corroborated the same time they identified the shooter, or they were made aware of the shooter either by attendees in the crowd or local police department?
There are a number of reports of when those times were made.
Was it
those
5 minutes
notifications.
before the first shot rang out?
No.
Generally speaking, was it 10 minutes before?
Is identified as a threat.
How many days before the shooting took place did Secret Service actually do their advance work to secure the facility that the rally was going to be held at?
5 days.
In the 5 days prior, when the security advance team did their work, did they identify the rooftop as a potential threat?
Again, I'm pulling those reports and that information.
It's been 9
to
days,
conduct those
Madam
interviews.
Director. Did they notice a rooftop 150 yards away that was a potential threat? Yes or no?
I am certain that the rooftop was noticed. I am pulling the reports.
What was the security parameters around securing that rooftop? What did they do?
There was overwatch provided for that rooftop.
Did Overwatch fail?
I am waiting to hear what the results of the investigation were so that I can identify where the failure was.
Who did you talk to that was on the ground that day that was responsible for Overwatch? What are their names?
I'm not going to provide their names in this setting.
Did you talk to the people that were providing Overwatch that day?
I've talked to the people that conducted the advance on that day and that were working the shift and were the counter snipers on that day.
So you talked to the counter sniper team. You talked to the people who were providing Overwatch that day, and you talked to the advance team, correct?
Yes, sir.
What did they tell you?
We are putting together a comprehensive report so that I can identify exactly where the gaps and the failures.
When the counter sniper team was on the roof, and they identified that there was suspicious activity on the roof in question, what was the chain of command's orders around the person on said roof? Because I'm quite sure somebody saw
Have a meeting and shit. Somebody needs to shoot me an email, and y'all fucking have a meeting over here or in my area and shit, and fucking I'll go out and eat or do some shit like that. That'd be cool because I have the vibe that we're probably not all far from each other at all, and that would be like fucking the ultimate live stream. And also, I'd fucking pay for all three of y'all's dinners.
But he took a shot.
I pay for my girls' dinner, so I'd be paying for 4 women's dinners.
Secret Service did not see the shooter on the roof until after the shooter took a shot?
I do not have all of those details at this time.
If you don't have those details after 9 days, Director, then what you're telling me is that you guys didn't see it. Is that correct?
I am telling you, I don't have all the details of the sequence at this time.
Director, it's been 9 days. Either you have the information or you do not. Is that correct?
We are still in the process of conducting interviews and an investigation.
Some of my colleagues have texted me over the last couple days, bipartisan, about whether you should lose your job. And I've been quiet on that question because I wanted to see what you were going to do today. In my opinion, you do need to be fired immediately. And it is because this is gross incompetence.
You need to be fired immediately.
And the fact that it's been 9 days, and these are simple questions to answer. I'm quite sure if I asked any one of my kids if they got in trouble and I told them to give me the details, I would get more answers from them than I'm getting from you right now. And that's what's frustrating on a bipartisan basis, on a nonpartisan basis. This is a joke. And Director, you're in charge. And that's why you need to go. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Chair now recognize Mr. Goldman from New York.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director, I want to follow up and just understand a little bit why there is so much information about this out in the public, including some from you and your communications team, and yet you're here pursuant to a subpoena under oath in front of Congress, and you're unable or unwilling to answer some of those same questions. Can you just explain why you are answering so many fewer questions here than you have to the media?
I'm answering the questions that I'm able to answer based on the fact that there are multiple ongoing investigations.
But you have answered some of these questions previously, correct? To the public, to the media.
Which questions?
Well, did you have an interview with ABC News?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And did you explain the interaction between local law enforcement and the Secret Service, and that local law enforcement was responsible for securing the perimeter of the building where the shooter was?
I said that the Secret Service is responsible for designing and implementing and executing the security plan, and that we rely on the assistance of our local law enforcement partners to assist us with that plan.
Let me ask you something. Were you given any instructions about what you can and cannot answer here today?
Yes, she was.
My ability to answer questions is solely reflective of the fact that there are multiple ongoing investigations, and I want to make sure that I provide accurate information that doesn't conflict with any of those investigations that are going on.
So is it your view that you can't talk about anything that happened that day until those investigations are completed?
My view is that I want to make sure that this committee and the American public gets correct and actual information.
And so is it your view that that can only happen after the completion of the investigation?
Important that we watch.
It is my view that when the investigations are complete, that we will be able to share that information.
And how about before that?
If I have factual information that I can share before that,
Because they do have.
I absolutely will.
I'm guessing you have factual information as to when.
There's legalized weed in Virginia State. I've been wanting to go to Roanoke. My girlfriend, her birthday is October 16th, if I'm not mistaken. It's definitely in October, either 16th or 26th. And I'm wanting to take her either to Salem, Massachusetts, which will be probably next to impossible during that time of the year at Halloween. Or I'm trying to convince her to go to Roanoke, Virginia. I'm trying to bring babe, let's go to Roanoke for her birthday. She's into spooky Halloween, fall, all that stuff. And it would be cool to while I'm out there doing that stuff to also doing some shit with the show, you know what I mean? Just a little food for thought, a little candy for your mind.
Time that the rooftop was provided Overwatch. I acknowledge that we are unaware at this time how the individual was able to access the roof.
Overwatch meaning from other counter sniper, other higher points?
Correct.
And so was it a failure then that when that shooter was on the rooftop, that Overwatch did not identify him before he fired his shots?
From legal.
I don't have the timeline of how the individual accessed the roof, where they accessed the roof, or how long they were on the roof.
Let me ask a couple things quickly. You have testified here about all the resources that the Secret Service needed to deploy to protect the NATO summit and all of the leaders here. Is that right?
That's something I didn't think
Yes.
of. Part of it too.
Did you have to rely more on local law enforcement because of the NATO summit for this event?
The Secret Service routinely works with local law enforcement at every event. It doesn't matter whether it is a NATO summit, NSSE, the RNC.
No, but that's not my question. Obviously, there's a natural give and take as to, I'm sure, how many agents you deploy and how much you rely on local law enforcement. Did you have to rely more on local law enforcement because there were fewer Secret Service assets available because of the NATO summit?
No.
I hope we get answers before the completion. I don't like the fact that the media has received far more answers than Congress has. If this is a function of getting your ducks in a row, I assume you have access to a lot of these reports and a lot of this information, and you should have come prepared here today. And I would just want to flag, Mr. Chairman, before I yield back, that I want to just point out one thing that my colleague from Texas was talking about when he said he recreated this shooting twice with an AR-15, and he had a 94% success rate, 15 out of 16 shots. I don't know why that doesn't convince him that we should get rid of AR-15s, but clearly we need to do something about the prevalence of AR-15s and weapons of war on our streets. And I yield back.
Chair now recognize Mr. Perry from Pennsylvania.
Thank you, Chairman. Director, I guess 60 days is the time of the investigation. Is that the information that you put out, or where did that come from, 60 days? Or is that just information that the committee members are talking about?
I stated that earlier today. I've asked.
Okay,
my
60
team-
days. So are you receiving regular updates? You're in charge of the Secret Service. This is about your organization. What happened 9 days ago? Are you receiving regular updates from the FBI on their investigation?
Yes, I am.
So you know some things are true, some things are probably not true. We want to talk to you about the things that we're hearing about and find out if they're true. Have you've been in contact with the FBI, then you're getting updates on a daily basis, right?
Yes.
Based on what you said. Okay, so, and are you confident that the person in question, Mr. Crooks, was the only person firing that day against the president or the crowd? Is he the only one? I'm not asking you yet if he acted alone, but is he the only one, or can you say that with certainty to the American people?
That is the information I have at this time, yes.
Okay, does it appear he acted alone?
That's the information we have at this time.
Okay, now let's talk about the fact that he was noticed as a person of interest, of concern, suspicion, as you say. Your PI team, how do they stay in? There's a sea of people. How does the PI team
What I miss?
get to that individual that's in question in the sea of people?
Ginger ale.
How's that individual tracked?
Our protective intelligence teams that work at our sites are paired up with a local police counterpart, and so they work in conjunction together.
So they just follow them around, or let me ask you this. Looking at the site, you have multiple perimeters, right? You have the secure perimeter, the inside perimeter, you have multiple perimeters. Was the
fucking dumbass, fucking stupid ass.
Cracking client support. It's like soccer. Out there, you can't see and know everything, but I'm connected to experts who I can chat with.
Is where our counter snipers were.
What about the water tower
positioned.
adjacent? What about how high is the water tower?
I don't have the height on the water tower.
Okay, seems like water towers are pretty high, at least in the photo. It looks like there might actually be a building right behind the AGR building that is even higher than the building that Crooks fired from. You're familiar with cover, concealment, and defilade, right? You're familiar with those terms?
Yes.
So how would your sniper team or your PI team track the individual and give vectors to Secret Service on the PI team to get to that individual to question him? And how would you cover the defilade, the cover and concealment of low areas that you can't see from where your sniper team immediately adjacent to the president were sighted? How would you do that if you're not up on the high ground?
So when our counter sniper teams go out and conduct an advance, they have a methodology and provide a grid system that our response teams are able to vector in if they see something that is troubling.
So when Mr. Jordan asked about the assets that were requested, let me just ask you about assets requested. Were aerial assets requested for this event from either the Secret Service or state police or anybody else, drone, manned, otherwise? Aerial assets, were they requested?
I can't speak to what the local
Just asking
police
if they were
may have
requested.
conversations with the local police, but I can tell you that the assets that were requested from the Secret Service for the site that day were all granted.
But were aerial assets required? I didn't ask if you used them or what you used. Were they requested?
Overwatch was requested and it was
Aerial.
provided.
Is that aerial? Because Overwatch could mean on the water tower or not on the water tower. Can you be specific, ma'am? I'm running out of daylight here.
I understand. If you're asking me about specifics, whether or not there was...
Is it not clear what I'm asking you? Were aerial assets requested by the president, by Secret Service, by anybody? Were they requested?
The Secret Service, we felt that we had a good plan in place.
Okay, fair enough. How about K9 assets with bomb sniffing or explosive sniffing capabilities? Requested. Didn't say they were present. Were they requested?
Those requests were fulfilled.
They were requested and fulfilled. So was the Crooks vehicle inside any of your perimeters?
No, it was not.
It was not. How did you? So it was not within the. It was not. So what was there a device located on Mr. Crook's body to detonate the vehicle?
That is the information that I have.
So what would be the point of detonating the vehicle if it was not inside the perimeter?
I have no idea what Mr. Crook's motivation was.
Ma'am, the fact that you haven't, I'll close with this, Mr. Chairman, haven't even visited the site. I understand there are other things going on, but the culture of your organization, the culture that doesn't, do you know how tall the president is? How tall is the president? President Trump, how tall is he?
He's over 6 feet tall. I don't
Okay, so do you assign agents based on their ability to cover physically and carry if necessary, the president of the United States, when you assign them to this mission? Is that a parameter that is considered?
I assign agents to work our protectees that are capable and have been trained by the Secret Service.
I understand they're trained, but if you're not tall enough, it has nothing to do with, we're not mad at you, but if somebody's 7 feet tall and you're 5 feet tall, there's going to be a delta there that is problematic in protecting the protectee. And I'm asking, is that a consideration when these agents, not saying you, but when they're assigned to the protectee?
The agents that are assigned to our protectees are perfectly capable.
Okay, ma'am. So
of
the
providing
culture is what I'm
protection.
concerned about, because the primary objective here seems to be something other than securing the site, securing the principal, and securing the people at the site. And that's the concern based on the answers that you've given today so far. Without a yield, Mr. Chairman.
Chair now recognizes Mr. Moskowitz from Florida.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for this hearing. I want to thank the subpoena that you sent. I want to thank Ranking Member Raskin and your work, the letter you sent to the committee. And I also support the creation of a commission to get to the bottom of what happened. Director, I just want to give you an honest assessment of how this is going for you today. Did you happen to catch the hearing many months ago in education where there were a bunch of university presidents and Elise Stefanik asked a very easy question and couldn't get an answer? Did you see that hearing?
No, I don't think I did.
Okay, well, let me tell you, it didn't go well. And the short end of that story was those university professors all resigned. They're gone. That's how this is going for you. This is where this is headed. Okay? This is, I don't know who prepared you for this. I don't know how many times you've testified in front of Congress. But a president was almost assassinated live on television, not just for Americans, but for the world to see. And this being your first opportunity, I understand there's an ongoing investigation. I understand there's things that you can not talk about, but the idea that we're getting less than you did on television is something that Democrats, Independents, and Republicans are going to find unacceptable. My high school, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, was on the list of mass shootings that Representative Raskin held up. That very day, the school resource officer, a police officer, did not run into the building. He hid in the stairwell while the shooter was in the building. He stayed outside, never helped. Okay. He also directed other officers who showed up on the scene not to go into the building. When it was determined that the failures in response and training, and that the sheriff fired nobody in his agency, Governor DeSantis then removed that sheriff. I supported the removal. So here's my question. You said there's going to be accountability. I understand you don't want to give us names. When you say that, are you telling the committee that once it's concluded, you're prepared to fire the people on the ground who made poor decisions that day?
I'm prepared to take the actions necessary.
No, that's nonsense. Okay. Accountability. The failure was human. That doesn't mean they're bad people. It means they failed that day. And a former president was almost assassinated. Okay. Are you prepared to fire the human failure on the ground? Yes or no? When you have the names of where those failures were, they're people. It's not like a piece of technology failed. It was people who failed that day. Are you prepared to fire them?
I don't have an answer as to whether.
Well, then how can there be accountability if you're not prepared to fire someone? And the reason why your name is going to be the person who's held accountable, the reason why members in this committee are calling for resignation, and I join in that, or for the president to fire you, is because you're saying there's going to be accountability, but you can't commit that people are going to get fired. Let me ask this question a different way. If Trump had been assassinated that day, if the gunman had succeeded, okay, would you have come and tendered your resignation?
I would still be sitting here because I would want to ensure the integrity of the investigation.
Totally
and move
understand.
forward.
That's a fair answer that you would have set up that process. But would you have had the honor to come in front of the committee and say, former president was assassinated on my watch, there should be new leadership?
I think that I have admitted that there was.
No, that's what I'm asking. Would you have
failure
tendered your resignation if he had been killed?
that occurred on my watch, and I am accountable for that.
Okay, but would you have tendered your resignation if he had been killed?
Yeah, he does.
I think that I've admitted that I've taken accountability and will take responsibility.
Okay. Well, let me ask I want to follow up on Representative Connolly's question, in which he asked about guns, and you were not willing to commit that makes your job harder. This is not about the Second Amendment. If there were over 400 million guns on the streets, if all of those guns were machine guns, would that make your job harder to protect people?
Again, I think weapons that are out there.
If all of those guns were rocket-propelled grenades, would that make your job harder?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Perfect. This is not a trick question. Thank you. Okay. I won't ask the other 15 things I was going to do. I was going to do drone strikes, but it's okay. So that's all we were asking. It creates a challenging environment. It has nothing to do with the Second Amendment or people's rights, but it does make your job harder. So credit to Representative Connolly for asking that question. One last thing, Mr. Chairman, and I'll conclude. You know, there was a question asked, is an Iranian assassin more capable than a 20-year-old? And I have been tough on Iran. I probably have more resolutions on Iran than...
I don't know if y'all have seen, but they've been trying to act like Iran had something to do with some sort of assassination attempt on Trump.
Right? And some of them are mentally unstable. And they have access to guns. And they're domestic terrorists. Someone talked about Christopher Wray. Christopher Wray has talked about domestic terrorism. And so, yes, we collectively come together on foreign threats. And I am not at all debasing the fact that there are foreign threats.
About proof of life? What do you mean, like alien life? What does that mean? Proof that Biden's still alive? Like, I don't understand. Big
school and killed 17 people. He was plenty capable, and he was an Iranian. Thank you.
Chair now recognizes Mr. Timmons from South Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Cheadle, we've asked you a lot of questions and haven't really got a lot of straight answers. I have intentionally created a line of questioning that I think that you can't answer. So the first question is, do you agree that the allocation of Secret Service resources should correspond with the risk profile of any given event. A higher degree of risk at one event should get more resources. Is that fair?
That is fair.
Okay. And when two events occur at the same time in the same geographic vicinity, that the risk profile of each event should be taken into account, and whichever event is greater risk should risk.
I was about to start tripping. At first, you had me tripping, dog. I was saying, "Oh my God, they're about to roll out Project Bluebeam. They're coming out with aliens and shit." Trump had an attempted assassination. Biden randomly drops out.
General and specific threats from foreign adversaries. As the chairman of intelligence remarked, Iran has said they want revenge, as well as when President Trump was in office, he made a lot of people mad, terrorists to be included all over the world. And, President Trump is the former president and the future president. So I would say that is a fairly high risk event. Would you agree?
Yes.
Okay, let's conversely, the First Lady had an event at a casino.
We are fighting a daily battle against the erosion of everything that makes this nation great. Now, here's where you come in. We need you.
I feel like I could do better than Matt Walsh.
What's interesting is that the casino is actually extremely secure. They already have magnetometers existing prior to this event even being announced. It was in a ballroom. And the size of the crowd, a mere 400. There were no specific threats. There may have been general threats. And the asset is the First Lady. Those seem like there's a huge disparity relative to risk. Would you agree?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Multiple whistleblowers and various media outlets have reported that the Pittsburgh field office of the Secret Service allocated 12 additional post standers to the First Lady's event and 3 additional post standers to the Trump rally. Is that correct?
There were no assets that were diverted from the First
No.
Lady's
This is a very simple question. I'm not asking if anyone was diverted. Did the First Lady's event that was relatively secure, especially compared to Trump's rally, get 12 assets? And did the First Lady's event get 12 assets and Trump's get 3 from the Pittsburgh field office? That's a yes or no question. If you don't know, don't answer it. I mean, if you don't know, don't answer
The number of personnel that were allocated to both of those events were comparable to the risk at both of those events.
Wow. Really? So you think that the Pittsburgh casino, 400 person in a ballroom with ingress egress through probably a very well guarded parking garage was 4 times more dangerous than a 20,000 person rally in an open field with the former president, future president? You think that that's 4 times more dangerous, the casino event?
I didn't say that at all.
Well, they got 4 times the resources from the Pittsburgh field office, who was likely in charge of the final walkthrough for both events. I mean, we've continually highlighted the failures of the Secret Service at the Trump rally. And, you have the former and future president getting shot. You have multiple injuries, 1 fatality. And I would have to think that if we had 9 more post standards, 9 more individuals that have the training and the integration into the Secret Service defense of Trump at that rally, that I have a feeling that Crooks would have had somebody come say hello to him before he fired a bunch of shots. What do you think that's possibly true?
There were significantly more assets and resources available at the former president's event than there were at the First.
Who made the decision to deploy 12 post standards to the casino where the First Lady was having a 400 person dinner, and only 3 people from the Pittsburgh field office to the 20,000 person plus Trump rally? Who made that decision?
There were additional Secret Service resources available at the former President Trump's event.
Who made the decision to deploy 12 to the First Lady's event and 3 to the Trump event?
The allocation of resources is decided based on the availability of personnel and their location and where they are, but there were sufficient resources.
What did you just say?
Were given to.
Did you just say there were sufficient resources? President Trump got shot. Someone got killed. There were not sufficient resources, clearly.
There was.
And it doesn't take 27 years of experience to know that. And whoever made that decision, it probably wasn't you, needs to be fired. And then you need to resign, because this is absolutely unacceptable. And you've lost the trust of the American people. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair now recognizes Ms. Tlaib from Michigan.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Director, for being here. You know, when we hear the headline, a 20-year-old young man with access to an assault weapon commits an act of mass violence. I mean, we've heard this before, over and over again. But the unfortunate thing is that my residents don't get a committee hearing. We have not had one committee hearing about the over 260 mass shootings that we've had, killing hundreds of people, injuring hundreds, changing their lives forever. And don't get me wrong, to many of my colleagues, I mean, I watched, and even the pool of blood, the screams, it was horrific. But it made me think about the images I saw after mass shootings at schools, grocery stores. I mean, I think of Buffalo, New York at a supermarket where a racist gunman killed 10 shoppers with an AR. In El Paso, AK-47 style assault rifle killed 22. In Florida, in Parkland, Florida, 17 students and teachers murdered, again with an AR. In Pittsburgh, at a place of faith, Tree of Life Synagogue, 11 murdered. And don't get me about Newton, Connecticut, which still breaks my heart. 26 murdered, including 20 elementary school children. This year in Michigan, we've had, Mr. Chair, 2 mass shootings. 21 shot in Detroit. One of the most horrific shootings we've seen. 2 killed at a splash pad in Rochester Hills,
in Secret Service,
Michigan. 8 shot there. Again, an assault weapon used. But the difference here is the former president gets a hearing in his attempt to assassinate, but our residents don't get a hearing about mass shootings, about gun violence in our country. You know, Mr. Chair, I ask this wholeheartedly. You know, they don't have Secret Service to protect them.
We're going to use the Trump assassination shit as a reason.
I don't have these mass agencies protecting our kids in the schools or the supermarket, movie theaters, or going to a block party in Detroit. I don't have that. We don't have that. But I can't believe we're just going to focus on that and not the fact that we're hearing yet again in the headlines a 20-year-old young man having access to an assault weapon, a weapon of war. Many of my veterans say they have to be trained to use. But he can get it, wasn't safely stored by the parent, grabbing that gun, and innocent lives were lost. Director, I know you got asked about this, and I think it's important, though, you know, for us to hear this. But how difficult is your job when there's such easy access to assault weapons in the streets?
I think the job of a Secret Service agent and officer is incredibly difficult. I think the environment we deal with every day and the dynamics of the threat environment is incredibly difficult. These are brave men and women who put their lives on the line. And a day like we had on July 13th is a day that no one in my agency ever wants to have as their responsibility. It is an incredibly difficult job.
Yeah, I immediately thought of the children in the audience. I mean, when you think about going to a rally with your family, again, their lives are forever changed. The incident never isolated. I really believe these incidents are never isolated. And I know Detroit Free Press had reported that the 20-year-old Pennsylvania shooter looked up the 2021 Oxford High School shooting in Michigan. Can you comment on what information this shooter was looking up in regarding the tragedy of Oxford High School, where it took 4 of our high school youth there?
I'm sorry, I'm not able to. The FBI has those details.
So you can't even tell us, I mean, was he looking at the type of weapon? How many?
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have those details.
Do you have, I mean, did they share that with you though?
I don't have the full content of what his searches were. I think that they are still in the process of examining all of his devices.
Okay. Again, you know, the impact, I want to be really serious about this. The impact on our families is more than just this political rally, Mr. Chair. We have to talk about this, even if we're in disagreement. Let's talk about it, because I've seen statistics that show that we could be saving lives now if we ban these weapons of war from our from being able to buy it at the local store down the street. I mean, we just can't continue to allow this to happen. And unfortunately, my residents are not former presidents of the United States. They don't get a hearing. They don't get Secret Service, any of that. And even among those that are expressing the failed in the system, they just deserve better. They truly do. Thank you, and I yield.
Chair now recognize Mr. Burchett from Tennessee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Cheadle, the shooter was set up on the roof of the AGR International building, as we know. Was the roof identified as a potential vulnerability days before the rally?
To my knowledge, yes, it was.
Were agents or officers inside the building? If so, what floor were they on?
We had local police officers inside the building.
The roof looks like it's a tin roof. How did no one inside that building hear someone moving on top of a metal roof?
I don't have the details of all of the interviews that have been conducted yet.
When will you have those?
I have been asking, and I want to have that information as soon as you do.
Okay.
As well.
Why did Secret Service fail to block the line of sight from that roof?
I think that the Secret Service put together a plan where they were counting that roof in as part of their overwatch, and that was the plan that they had put in place that day.
If you weren't going to put a security personnel on the roof, why not at least use drone technology or aerial surveillance to monitor the rally?
There are a number of times that we do use drone technology. I'm not speaking specifically to this event and what was utilized or not. There are times when drone technology is available and helpful at events, and there are times when it is not appropriate.
Do y'all use Signal? Do you personally use Signal to communicate with any official from the White House? Signal on your phone.
Oh, on occasion, I'm sure that there are people that use Signal. Yes.
Okay. Do you use it to speak with the White House? Use Signal?
No, I do not.
Okay. When was Thomas Crooks first identified as a person of interest? Let me help you. At 5:10, he was spotted with a rangefinder at 5:51. And when did Secret Service notice him?
Again, I don't have those specific timelines, but it was a relatively short period of time.
Let me help you. 5:52. Ms. Cheadle, why was President Trump allowed on stage 10 minutes after the Secret Service spotted a suspicious individual? That seems to me to be the worst thing of all. All the breakdown in all this communication, all the BS you've been feeding us here today or not feeding us, that seems to be the question.
So as I've stated before, there are a number of events where suspicious people may be identified. That doesn't necessarily.
Ma'am, I submit to you, you got a guy who's going to be the next president of the United States. He's on stage. I've been to these events. We've all been to these events. A car backfires and there's a 15-minute dadgum wait. That's not acceptable. Did the Secret Service tell President Trump they'd spotted a suspicious individual before he was shot?
I am unclear as to what the communication was with the former president at that
I'll
time.
take that as a no. Did y'all deny President Trump's request for more security? Yes or no? And when was the most recent request for additional security?
The rally request for security, all of those requests were fulfilled.
And were there any personnel redirected to Jill Biden's rally?
No.
Who made the decision on the direction of agents at either one of those rallies?
I'm unclear as to your question on the direction of the agents.
I said, who directed those agents?
Design, develop, scale, repeat. Wix Studio, the platform for agencies and enterprises.
A methodology in which agents are available for assignments, and they are assigned based on either geographic location or logistics or flight.
Ma'am, I appreciate all that, but that methodology about got President Trump killed. Was the security detail guarding President Trump a temporary detail?
The personnel who are assigned to the former president's detail are assigned to him.
Why was there a different detail on the opening night of the convention than the detail that was guarding him in Pennsylvania?
The president has a very large permanent protective detail assigned to him. They work shift work, and so it could be that people you saw at the rally were not working the same shift the day that he was.
I can assure you, ma'am, somebody that's a lot shorter than the president was not at the convention, and the people that were cowering down behind the mass of agents that were on top of the president were not in the convention hall. At least I didn't see them. You can't seem to answer a single question about an ongoing investigation, ma'am. And you don't know when the information will be released publicly. Are you waiting for the administration to sign off?
No, I am waiting for the results of the investigation, at which time.
Okay. Let me ask you one more question. You found explosives in the shooter's possession. Is that correct?
The FBI found explosives.
Do we know who directed this young man how to make those explosives?
I believe that the FBI is still looking into that on their investigation.
Ms. Cheadle, you said that the buck stops with me, and I agree. I don't think you should resign. I think you should have been fired. Ma'am, you are a DEI horror story. I've told my daughter multiple times, my wife and my daughter, we talk to her all the time about how she's going to succeed in life. She'll succeed in life by achieving. Ma'am, you have not achieved today. You've let the American public down. If it was up to me, you'd be gone. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman.
Chair now recognizes Ms. Crockett from Texas.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. And let me just pick up where my colleague from Tennessee left off. Director Cheadle, was the incident on July 13th due to DEI, or rather systemic failures in communication and potentially safety protocols?
The incident on the 13th has nothing to do with DEI. The incident on the 13th has to do with a failure or a gap either in planning or communication.
Thank you so much. In fact, I have a few articles that I will enter into the record once I wrap up that actually acknowledge a number of women specifically for their valor in their service, whether it's been in various levels of law enforcement. But, you know, I want to stick here for just a second, because earlier you had a conversation in which there was a discussion about training. And I want to talk about training, and I want to talk about the fact that there's been a little bit of dancing around as it relates to this being a suspicious person and this being a situation that was perceived to be a threat. And it seems as if there's a different analysis that takes place. One of my questions has to do with if you have any bias training that your officers undergo. And the reason that I ask that, because as a civil rights lawyer, I have learned so many times in having to deal with law enforcement that there usually is not a perception of a threat when it is a young white male, even if they are carrying a long gun. Yet a lot of times, at least in this country, when it comes to law enforcement, there is a perceived threat just by somebody having a little bit more melanin in their skin. So I'm curious to know, because a lot of times, one of the things that we have consistently pushed for on my side of things, and when I say my side, is once we are looking at a tragedy in which law enforcement made an error, is the bias training and whether or not our officers are getting it. So I'm curious to know, in some of the training that you talk about that is part of your budget, has bias training been part of that?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you. I know that today is a rough day, and on that day in Pennsylvania, it was a rough day. And the reality is that I understand it, and you may or may not know the answer to this question. In the space in which this event took place, it was an open carry space. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So I hail from the state of Texas, and interestingly enough, I was serving in the state house right after there was a mass shooting in El Paso. We had an opportunity to do right by our citizens in Texas, but we did not. Instead, they passed permitless carry. And what my colleagues kept trying to get you to answer, because we want to come up with solutions, we don't want to keep pointing the finger. And right now, you've got a bunch of fingers that are pointed at you. But our job is to solve problems for the American people. And to be perfectly honest, the numbers are clear. I think almost every major law enforcement agency come forward and say that they were against permitless carry because they said that their jobs would be made more difficult. Unfortunately, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle in the state of Texas decided that they would ignore those warnings, and they passed the law instead. And right after they passed that law, we ended up with Uvalde. And we heard the stories of those officers that were scared to go in and save those babies because of the firearm in which that, in that case, 18-year-old had in his hands. They also were given an opportunity to say, hey, raise the age and make it to where at least you have to be 21 before you can possess this type of weapon. And they chose not to. And we have the facts. It shows, and I'll enter this into the record as well, if there is no objection, deaths from firearms keep climbing in Texas decades after lawmakers began weakening gun regulations. That is from the Texas Tribune.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you so much. The last thing that I'm just going to make a point of saying is that we all care about this issue because we know that there has been a spike in violence, political violence in this country. Are you aware of the fact that the numbers are higher right now?
Yes.
Okay. In addition to that, and I'm going to point a little blame at ourselves because right now you got all the fingers pointed at you. But the reality is that we have a number of congressional members that are consistently engaging in violent rhetoric, and it needs to be toned down. The reality is that people are listening and they're paying attention. But unfortunately, another thing that is happening because we're not getting answers from you today is the conspiracy theories. They have already began. Have you heard of any of the conspiracies?
Yes.
Okay. The problem with these conspiracies is that when people believe that, say, the president of the United States ordered a hit, or they believe it was an inside job, or whatever conspiracies they believe because they don't have any facts in front of them, that potentially incites the next level of violence at the next event in retaliation for this. So we are only begging for your job as it relates to being the director, as well as the men and women that you are protecting as their director, that you keep them safe by making sure that the American people have the information that they need so that they can feel as if Secret Service is on the side of the American people. And ma'am, I don't doubt that Secret Service is on the side of the American people. But right now, so long as these conspiracy theories continue to fester, it is going to make your job that much harder. Thank you so much, and I yield.
Chair now recognizes Ms. Marjorie Taylor Greene from Georgia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Cheadle, I'd like to remind you that you're under oath. The site team has a senior supervisor, an advanced team, a protective intelligence team, a counter sniper element, and detail. Who was the agent in charge? How long has she been the agent in charge? And what is her Secret Service background?
So I'm not going to provide a name.
Why not? You're here to answer our
This
questions.
forum, I'm not going to provide names of.
You stated in your testimony, you said, I am here today to answer your questions.
That is correct.
Answer the question.
I'm not going to provide names of our personnel. to
Why
this
not?
committee Today.
The American people are demanding these answers from you today, Ms. Cheadle.
I will do the best to provide you accurate information based on the facts that I have at this time.
You're not answering our questions. The advance element coordinates with other intel or law enforcement partners, identifies threats and weaknesses at the sites and movements. We'd like a copy of the advance report. Have you brought it here with you today?
We will comply with the request for the documentation that has been requested.
When will that be, Ms. Cheadle? Because you should have brought it today.
I am certain that our personnel are working on obtaining all of that documentation.
I don't believe you, and neither do the people watching this hearing. You're not doing well, as Mr. Moskowitz informed you. You've been sitting here for over 3 hours, and I have you know the entire country is demanding you resign and demanding that you be fired if you do not resign. Things are not going well for you. You need to answer the questions. Was there a protective intelligence team, and what technical resources were utilized for that event, specifically drone or helicopter assets?
There were a number of technical assets that were deployed for that event, and there was a protective intelligence team that was assigned to that event.
Why was Crooks able to fly a drone over the entire area the day of the rally and the day of his assassination attempt?
To my knowledge, he did not fly the drone over the entire area.
How did he fly a drone over the area, period? Any part of the area?
Again, I would have to go back and check the timeline of when that took place and when the event.
Why didn't you bring the timeline with you today to answer our questions?
I don't have all of the answers on the timelines based on the criminal investigation.
Were you not prepared today to answer our questions?
I am prepared to answer the questions based on the information and wanted to be able to provide.
Do you have a timeline that do you have a timeline at all from any of the day?
I have a timeline that does not have specifics.
That's shocking. That is absolutely unacceptable. That means you are a failure at your job. Let's talk about things that are prohibited in Trump rallies. And I've been to a lot of Trump rallies. Backpacks and bags, bicycles, firearms, any type of weapon or any other item determined to be a potential safety hazard, like a rangefinder would be one. At 5:10, Crooks is first observed by one of the snipers, AGR Sniper 1, at the building. 5:10, President Trump was shot in the face at 6:11 p.m. 5:28, AGR Sniper 1 takes a picture of a bicycle and 2 bags. Those belong to Crooks. 5:32, AGR Sniper 1 spots Crooks looking at his phone and using a rangefinder. 5:55, Butler ESU Command confirms receipt of photos and states they have been relayed on. 6:05 p.m., AGR Sniper 1 later communicates that Crooks is seen moving northeast in direction of Sheets and that Crooks has a backpack. 2 minutes before the shooting, while President Trump has been allowed to take the stage, people see Crooks laying on his stomach in a sniper position on the roof, and they're yelling he has a gun, and they are trying to alert law enforcement and Secret Service. Why was Crooks not shot by the snipers? Why was he allowed to be there?
As soon as the individual was identified as a threat, they were...
No. What do you consider to be a threat? A man with a gun laying in a sniper position, a man that had a backpack, a man that had a bicycle, a man that had a rangefinder. At what point is he determined a threat?
An individual with a backpack is not a threat. An individual with a rangefinder is not a threat.
What about a man laying on a building that has direct line of sight of President Trump with a gun that people are screaming and pointing out? Is that a threat, Ms. Cheadle?
Once that individual was identified, they were neutralized.
No, they were neutralized. Crooks was neutralized after he shot President Trump in the face, Ms. Cheadle. Is he only a threat once he fires the weapon?
As soon as the counter sniper identified that individual, they were able to neutralize them.
How were people in the crowd? Okay, then let's just take it this way. People under your command did not consider him to be a threat, yet people in the crowd knew he had a gun and considered him to be a threat. That means that you are a complete failure as the director of the Secret Service, that people under your command don't perceive a man laying on a roof with direct line to the president with a gun. They don't perceive that to be a threat, yet the people in the crowd do. How is that possible?
That's the last question, but please answer the question, Ms. Director.
I'm not certain at this time how the information from the people in the crowd was relayed to any law enforcement personnel.
No, you knew that everyone knew. The people there knew that there was a danger. They knew there was a threat to President Trump, and it was allowed to happen. Was there a stand-down order, Ms. Cheadle? Was there a conspiracy to kill President Trump?
Absolutely not.
Then how did this happen? And why are you still sitting here not turning in your letter of resignation?
Last question, but please answer, and then I'll recognize Ms. Presley. Please answer that question.
That is what we are investigating to determine.
We're waiting for your letter. We are waiting for your letter of resignation, and you really need to consider doing that before you leave today.
Chair now recognizes Ms. Presley from Massachusetts.
Thank you.
Without objection to order. Good morning. Today's hearing is for the American people who are seeking answers about the attempted assassination of President Trump. A little over a week ago, Americans watched in horror as a shooter attempted to assassinate President Donald J. Trump at a campaign rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. The gunman nearly succeeded. The bullet that struck President Trump's head was less than an inch from taking his life. President Trump survived, but one rallygoer, Corey Comparator, tragically did not. 2 others were seriously injured. It was a horrifying moment in American history. The horror was exceeded only by the bravery of the law enforcement agents who threw themselves in harm's way when shots were fired. the bravery of a crowd unwavering in its refusal to panic, and the bravery of a bloody President Trump refusing to run. While we give overwhelming thanks to the individual Secret Service agents who did their jobs under immense pressure, this tragedy was preventable. The Secret Service's protective mission is to protect U.S. and visiting world leaders and safeguard U.S. elections through protection of candidates and nominees. The Secret Service has a zero-fail mission, but it failed on July 13th and in the days leading up to the rally. The Secret Service has thousands of employees and a significant budget, but it has now become the face of incompetence. The committee has a long track record of providing oversight of the Secret Service. Our predecessors, both Jason Chaffetz and Elijah Cummings, among others, worked together to issue warnings and recommendations to address obvious shortcomings in the agency's makeup and operations. Unfortunately, those warnings and recommendations have gone unheeded. A former president and current candidate for president was shot in the head by a sniper within 500 feet of the podium. This is unacceptable, and we are concerned the Secret Service lacks the proper management to keep protectees safe from bad actors. Americans demand answers, but they have not been getting them from the Secret Service. We are instead learning about new facts about the events surrounding the attempted assassination every day from whistleblowers and leaks. Americans demand accountability, but no one is yet to be fired for this historic failure. Today's witness, Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheadle, is here under subpoena to answer questions about how the agency failed President Trump and the victims who attended the rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. It is my firm belief, Director Cheadle, that you should resign. However, in complete defiance, Director Cheadle has maintained she will not tender her resignation. Therefore, she will answer questions today from members of this committee seeking to provide clarity to the American people about how these events were allowed to transpire. We will ask these questions because the Secret Service and its parent agency, the Department of Homeland Security, have been unwilling to provide answers to the American people. DHS has sought to push this hearing to a different time. Secret Service has suggested the hearing occur without media presence, and both agencies have provided only shallow explanations to Congress about what happened on July 13th. Indeed, DHS and Secret Service's lack of communication with the Oversight Committee required me to issue a subpoena compelling Director Cheadle to attend today, and still DHS requested more time to prepare. It shouldn't take this much time or preparation, Director Cheadle, to tell the truth and to be transparent with the American people. I am thankful to the ranking member, Mr. Raskin, for joining me and insisting that Director Cheadle appear today. God knows the ranking member and I disagree on many things, but that does not matter today. The safety of Secret Service protectees is not based on their political affiliation, and the bottom line is that under Director Cheadle's leadership, we question whether anyone is safe. Not President Biden, not the First Lady, not the White House, and certainly not the presidential candidates. The July 13th assassination attempt is one of the darkest days in American political history. It represents the ugliest parts of what American politics has become: hatred of each other and a dangerous turn to extremism. Before we are Republicans or Democrats, we are Americans. If we place our political affiliations above our duty and love of country, we cannot maintain a country. We must ensure our republic is strong, and our republic cannot be strong when our leadership, our elections, our institutions, and our candidates are threatened by extremism and violence. Today, Director Cheadle will answer questions about why she deserves to continue to play a critical role in preserving this country's safety and, at the very least, what led to the catastrophic, deadly events on July 13th in Butler, Pennsylvania.
On July 13th.
Again, I do not believe Director Cheadle deserves to maintain her position as head of the Secret Service, but members of the American people will make their own decisions based on her answers today. I urge Director Cheadle to be transparent and forthcoming in her testimony today. Americans deserve no less. We have a duty to find out how this happened and to ensure it never happens again.
Save up to 80% off Wayfair's Black Friday in July from July 26th through 29th.
Yes.
Taught us that the way to find common ground in a crisis is to look for the higher ground. And last week, Chairman Comer and I came together to reach for that higher ground. We made a joint statement condemning the mass shooting and assassination attempt against former President Trump as a grave assault on our democracies. We wrote, "We are united in condemning all political violence." I join the good chairman in expressing condolences to the family of Corey Comparatori and in sending healing wishes to the wounded victims also of this atrocious act of violence. Some are calling it a miracle that former President Trump escaped this AR-15 attack, unlike so many thousands of our fellow citizens who have been killed or seriously wounded in other AR-15 shootings. Whether this miracle is of divine providence or of an adventitious nature will be up to each of us to ponder, but our job in Congress is not simply to marvel at miracles or count on good luck, but to act as public policy legislators to do whatever we can to prevent future political violence, attempted assassinations, and mass shootings. The chairman and I are thus determined to get to the bottom of the stunning security failures that enabled this 20-year-old lone gunman who borrowed his father's AR-15 to perpetrate a mass shooting and assassination attempt at an event protected by the Secret Service as well as state and local police. We'll ask hard questions of Director Cheadle today in order to identify and understand the shocking security failures that occurred and to help transform the operations of the Secret Service to prevent anything like this from happening again. But we can't let ourselves off the hook either, dear colleagues. What happened in Butler, Pennsylvania was a double failure. The failure by the Secret Service to properly protect former President Trump and the failure of Congress to properly protect our people from criminal gun violence. We must therefore also ask hard questions about whether our laws are making it too easy for potential assassins to obtain firearms generally and the AR-15 specifically. Mr. Comparatori, former President Trump, and the other rally attendees wounded in Butler are now members of a club no one wants to belong to, the thousands of people who have fallen victim to mass shootings. Last year, we had 655 mass shootings in America, defined as 4 or more people being shot or killed in a single event, not including the shooter. 712 people died and nearly 2,700 people were wounded in these attacks in 2023. Mass shootings are commonplace. They happen at political rallies and constituent meetings, in our elementary schools, middle schools, and
These layers include personnel, technical, and tactical assets, which are a force multiplier for our protective posture. During every advance, we attempt to strike a balance between enabling the protectee to be visible and our protective requirements to be secure. I know this because I have spent 29 years in this agency. I came up through the ranks. I've secured events for every president since President Clinton, supervised on Vice President Cheney's detail, led our training center, oversaw all of the investigations and protective visits in the state of Georgia, supervised on Vice President Biden's detail, and the agency's entire protective mission during the Trump administration. The comprehensive advance process involves collaborative planning between our Secret Service, the protectee's staff, local law enforcement partners, and the level of security provided for the former president increased well before the campaign and has been steadily increasing as threats evolve. The security plan included a full assessment of the Butler Farm showgrounds to identify security vulnerabilities and craft a security plan for the protectee, attendees, and the public. Immediately following the assassination attempt, I directed the activation of my crisis center. I assembled my executive team to begin surging more protective resources to the former president and to ensure the wellness of our people post-incident, all while securing an active crime scene. I immediately ordered a reevaluation of the Republican National Convention security plan, and I increased the security posture in the National Capital Region for all permanent protectees and sites. At the same time, I initiated a mission assurance investigation within our agency. I have instructed my team that all necessary resources will be dedicated to investigating these matters. We will not rest until we have explored every option, and we will leave no stone unturned. But I want to be clear, I am not waiting for these investigations to be completed prior to making changes. Over the past 2 weeks, we successfully led the planning and execution of the 75th NATO Summit and the Republican National Convention. Over the next few months, we will implement security plans for the Democratic National Convention, the United Nations General Assembly, and have already begun planning and coordinating the 2025 inauguration. It is now more important than ever for the men and women of the Secret Service to remain resilient and to focus on what is necessary to carry out our critical mission. Our agency needs to be adequately resourced in order to serve our current mission requirements and anticipate future requirements. The Secret Service currently protects 36 individuals on a daily basis, as well as world leaders who visit the United States, like Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who arrived in Washington, D.C. today. The coming years will bring an unprecedented heavy protection tempo. I have no doubt that the processes that I have implemented during my tenure as director,
that Drew, what a scumbag. I can't think of a more sophisticated word. Well, y'all was fun hanging out. Thank you for hanging out, ladies and Garrett. Appreciate y'all. It's fun to do it again. Maybe do morning coffee show or something like that. I'm hitting up a couple of the buddies in the morning. We might have a special guest. Thank you to everybody that watched on Kick. So we had a couple people on Kick. That's what's up. Go ahead and follow. And y'all, if any of you guys fuck with Kick, then go ahead and give your boy a follow right here. And we'll get everybody on Twitch as well. It was fun chilling with you guys.